Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this, our third set of presentations for day 3, where I am. It's raining cats and dogs, as some may say. I am Selwyn Rodolfo, the moderator for this session, titled Evaluation of AI-Enhanced Productive Tools for the Graduate Students Literature Review Workflow. Before we begin, there are a few reminders. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. We have a code of conduct that we adhere to for this conference. The link has just been posted in the chat. If you experience any issues related to conduct, please contact us via email, and that email has also been posted in the chat. This session is being recorded. Your microphones are muted. Questions can be posed via the question and answer, the Q&A icon. Responses will be provided after the presentation. You may also use the chat feature for general comments. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters, who are all from the University of Kansas. We have Carmen Orth-Alfie, Graduate Engagement Librarian; Paul Thomas, Library Specialist; and Samantha Demmerle, Assistant Director, Center for Learning and Writing Support. So please join me in welcoming Carmen, Paul, and Samantha.
Hello, everyone. First, I'm going to let you know that Samantha is not able to join us today. Unfortunately, her travel plans changed as we were working on this. But I want to first thank everybody for being here. It's exciting to see so many people that are interested in this topic. I'm Carmen Orth-Alfie, and I started this research project by having conversations with Paul and Samantha, and now we are just a equal research team trying to help graduate students here at our R1 university. My colleague Paul Thomas is our local Zotero and EndNote guru and is known by many of the graduate students here. Our colleague Samantha Demmerle, who is not able to join us, is a graduate writing whisperer in our writing center and has been extremely valuable in helping us understand the needs of graduate students. Our team directly works with students who are seeking assistance as they are working on their theses and dissertations. To get us started, I have this we have a sort of a mindfulness activity to have us all refocus. There's a lot of different sessions to have us refocus on this topic of serving graduate students. So if, for those of you that are able to, please go to the URL menti.com, which is listed at the top of this screen. And the code to access is 79347880. And that's at menti.com, MENTI.com. And we're hoping that you would just enter a word that describes how you feel about recommending generative AI tools to graduate students. And I see someone's already made it in there. Paul put up our first word. He put in bats. And one of the reasons why I should let Paul speak for himself, but one of the reasons why I know he put bats in is because when he is giving workshops on Zotero and EndNote, he almost always uses examples of research articles about bats.
Yeah, I think they're cute. So that was the test word.
And I see we have more people checking in here. You are definitely entering some of the words I also think about. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up the most. Cautious is currently still the runner on this. And we'll just have a few more come in. And I see someone did a thumbs up on that cautious, yeah. Apprehensive is my word. I didn't put it in there, but it would cause it to be a little bit bigger if I were to enter in right now. I feel like you guys are really in line with us. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. It's not like one way or the other.
Nervous, anxious, cautious, apprehensive, excited, hesitant, worried, icky. Yeah, that's a very visceral way of thinking about it. Looks like we have a couple more people that might enter in. So hopefully we don't add to that anxiety, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. So apprehensive, as I said, was my word. I recently found this quote from a Forbes article, and the quote is from Michelle Garside, who is a brand strategist, and the Forbes article quoted her. And I found this to be significant because this idea of we don't need more words, we need more meaning, and meaning isn't generated, it's remembered. There's a difference in what the goals are for research at the graduate level than that of the research of faculty and professional level. The difference is that graduate students are still learning their field and learning what the scholarly conversation is in their field. What AI can do for faculty and professionals, those that already have domain knowledge, is support and increase the speed of publication. But with AI, what AI does for graduate students might be more dangerous. Speed is not conducive to deep knowledge acquisition.
So to briefly go over what we'll be talking about today, we have an agenda on the slide right now. First, we're going to talk about the goals of our research, and then we will introduce you all to the graduate literature review process. We'll talk about generative AI tools for the graduate literature review process. There'll be an example survey in there, and then we will conclude with implications for graduate training and support. Before we jump into this, it's important to note that for the purpose of this project, we're defining artificial intelligence, or we're viewing artificial intelligence as a rather broad term that encompasses both pre-2022 technologies like algorithmic machine learning and natural language processing, as well as newer technologies such as the ChatGPT and the various LLMs that have cropped up in the last few years, all of which are disrupting traditional and even modern literature review workflows. Newer productivity tools are now incorporating generative AI based on largely large language models, as well as retrieval augmented generation and other developments that many both in and outside of academia struggle to fully understand. So that's kind of what we want to explore, and that's the issue we want to clear up.
So for this presentation, we need to note that we do have an internal grant that is providing funds for us to do a deep dive when we finally select some tools to really investigate closely. And then we'll also have funding to provide access, license content, or license those tools for graduate students then to test those out. So we had to acknowledge that. And I should note here that Samantha has inserted a picture of herself. She provides a lot of brains for us to understand the graduate students and their writing processes. So that was the picture she chose to represent herself since she couldn't be here. So the goals of the project is that there's several phases. And one of those phases is to survey a variety of generative AI tools, specifically looking for ones that might fit into the process for doing a literature review. We looked at the list that Ithaca S&R maintains on generative AI tools and pulled things from there. We're currently looking at those tools at a very high level. We'll be developing training for the graduate students as we get further along in this program of research, and we'll be working on a pre and post test of those students using use of AI.
So the literature review process can often be a laborious one, and as a result, many tools have cropped up that aim to make it easier, both for students as well as, established researchers. When we were looking at all these tools, we wanted a way to organize them and kind of better understand how they are situated with respect to one another. And so we developed a tripartite schema, which is based largely on technological sophistication. At the first category are going to be traditional tools, and these are tools that are time tested but are often slow and require manual input. Note cards are a great example. If you want to kind of a more humorous example, think of the like cartoon style conspiracy theory boards with the string connecting images, stuff like that require you to manually place things. More modern tools combine contemporary and established technology with traditional research methods or techniques. So these are going to be things like Zotero, EndNote, OneNote, Dropbox, anything like that. And then finally, we have innovative tools, which are often experimental or cutting edge. They tend to be embraced mostly by new academics, younger academics sometimes, but they can easily be abused by those seeking shortcuts. And they also carry the risk of not being understood or accepted by the academic establishment. In some disciplines, the tools which were once considered innovative have largely become modern. I feel like the medical world and kind of like the hard sciences is a good example. Whereas in other fields, certain modern and innovative tools are not accepted or haven't really been integrated, if at all. And for graduate students, this is a bit of a logistical nightmare because students must navigate the demands of their fields as well as the demands of their advisors and their committee members, many of whom might be unfamiliar with the innovative and at times modern research tools that can be used. On the screen, you'll see the graduate student literature review workflow, which Carmen and I previously proposed, a citation underneath. The workflow is broken down into discrete units or stages, each of which is focused on a particular element of the review process. These stages entail discrete tasks which require specific skills and sometimes technological ability. Our goal in breaking down the graduate research process was to demonstrate that literature review or the literature review process is not a monolithic, just one thing you do. It's a bunch of little tasks that all combine to create something larger than that. Additionally, you'll notice the circular arrows underneath each stage. This is to indicate the recursive nature of each stage as well as the iterative nature of the process itself. This highlights that it's not linear. You're not starting from one side and going to the other. You might start, in the middle and go to the right and then bump back to the left, and, you can bounce all around. The emphasis here for students, at least, is that this literature review process takes time, and there are many ways to go about doing it. At KU, the members of the KU Library's Center for Graduate Initiatives and Engagement, as well as the KU Writing Center, spend considerable energy supporting this literature review process. That said, we acknowledge that there are distinct gaps in our services, namely at the stages of recording, analyzing, and to an extent, remixing information. And real quick, just to briefly define, remixing is going to be the transmogrification of data or information. So we're talking about things like translation, where you're taking text and converting it into another type of text. Converting prose into a table, converting a table into prose, that sort of thing. And before we began to explore generative AI in a comprehensive way, we were hoping to find technology that better helped us assist graduate students at these distinct stages that were not traditionally covered. But we quickly realized that generative AI tools, as they currently exist, are being designed to cover or support users at most, if not all, stages of the literature review process. And so this project has evolved from finding a handful of tools that would solve the problems we had initially identified to, trying to wade through all the various generative AI tools that are covering many stages at once.
At this time, we were going to have another poll. I'm not seeing the question, but if you're able to get into this, I think you might have to adjust. When I was testing this out, it was working. But our question is for you to consider what stages of the literature review workflow that you or your unit provides for graduate students. It doesn't appear to be working, so I apologize for that. And I guess we should just go on. But just take a moment and stop and think about what you are doing right now and where your gaps are. Yeah, I can't get this to start. My apologies.
Weird. And so here's a revised look at the graduate research process. In revising this, we removed the generating information stage because that's kind of true for all of this. And then we also blurred the boxes a little better to emphasize that, again, that these are not discrete units that you go from A to B to C, but they often blend in. And because of that, that makes it even more of a challenge because sometimes you're doing something that feels like you're writing, but then you realize you're actually sharing or recording or something. So there's a lot of blurring.
So as I mentioned before, we are surveying or looking at sort of a high-level review of 60 plus tools. Again, most of these are coming from SNR, but we're also discovering tools serendipitously through articles that we're reading, blogs and YouTube videos that are directed towards graduate student audience, and also from the larger library community. Many of these AI tools claim to support many stages of the research process, generating information such as ideation for finding a search topic, searching for the information, which is very common, recording information such as taking notes or coding text, analyzing that through graphs, helping you write, remix doing those translations, as Paul had noted, as well as sharing what you're working on. This top level assessment has been based on what we can learn without paying for anything. So far, we haven't done any of that paying, which means we're kind of limited on what we can understand. While these tools have free use for the program, they're often limited by 10 prompts, 5 reports, so many tokens. The most basic subscription plan is usually about $10, but some of them are $60, $70 plus per month. For our use and audience, it is important that we have training materials. So it's another thing that we're reviewing. It is essential review. We find that, this initial review, we find that very few of the AI tools have training modules for deeper understanding of their functionality, especially in the relationship to the literature review. This may not be an issue for most students, as natural language processing is designed for most accessible use. Even so, many of these programs do not offer guidance on how to use the results. They produce research without training on how to use the results. So it just can be very confusing. Very few of the AI tools clearly indicate their corpus, but those that do, they provide more explanation of how their AI is trained. When the primary function is search, we find that most are providing discovery of only open access content. If we are able to get more details about the corpus, the sources tend to be STEM heavy, while the tool might have ambitions to appeal to a wider audience. They're still restrictive in terms of their corpus. So we're going to look at 4 different tools, and Paul's going to start us off.
Yeah, so the first one we'll be looking at is Consensus, which is a search engine that bills itself as using AI to find answers in scientific research. Consensus claims that it can help students and researchers, especially those in medical and scientific fields, that it hosts about 200 million academic papers covering every field in partnership with Semantic Scholar, and that it can save valuable time with their consensus meter. Of particular interest here is that consensus meter, which uses AI to analyze the first 20 search results for yes or no questions. It categorizes the answers as yes, no, or possibly, but only if the AI determines the information is clearly relevant to your question. According to the company, the consensus meter is the next step towards, quote unquote, delivering users rigorous evidence-based insights at the click of a button. So how does this help graduate students with the lit review process? The consensus feature is interesting and unique, but you do have to remember that it's useful for only certain types of questions, namely like yes or no questions. It doesn't do a super great job at providing robust answers to very robust questions. Also, when since it's only analyzing the first 20 papers to answer a question, you lose a lot of the nuance of research. And in this way, it kind of reminds me of when I'm working with undergrads and they need to do a research project and they just use the first page of a Google search results rather than diving into books and all that, other research, they just kind of stick to one selection of sources. Graduate students will thus miss out on the methodological, analytic, theoretical differences necessary for understanding the scholarly conversation. And we don't want to say that this is the case for consensus, but the consensus meter is kind of indicative of a trend we noticed, which was a lot of these companies have like a big idea or a cool thing that kind of suggests that they might be trying to sell it to a larger tech company. Like that's kind of the goal, is to get bought up so that it can be integrated. So again, not saying that consensus is doing this, but it does kind of feel like a one-trick pony for that reason. And because of that, outside of searching, I don't think we would necessarily recommend students use this, just general searching.
So the next one we're going to look at is Undermine. This is a fairly new tool that claims to save the researcher a lot of time. It is often described as an agentic tool and compared to Elicit, SciSpace, Cite, and other new generative AI tools. So some of those claims is that it's claiming that it can do this in just a few minutes and save a lot of time. You start out by chatting with the tool to refine your research question or more of a statement. The process then takes about, once you agree to what it's actually going to base the search on, it's going to take about 5 minutes to run that search. And that search is iterative. It's going through several different search processes. When it's done, it'll give you a report. While you're waiting, it's going to give you a little video to help explain some of what you're going to see in the report. Similar to other tools, Undermine uses Semantic Scholar, and the tool was originally developed using Archive repository. Their assessment of 10 times better than Google Scholar is reported in a white paper for their own internal assessment. In terms of how we look at this for the graduate literature review process, the tool primarily supports that search, just like the other ones we're looking at today. But it does seem to have a unique way of doing that search process, being this iterative search that does a report. The user, as I said, starts out with that refining the question or statement. You select it. Once that report is completed, you're able to download it, print it, share it with others. The report includes information for analysis, which has some features reminiscent of tools such as Research Rabbit, as well as a simple chat with PDF with a PDF tool. The design might help a graduate student focus on defining a clear prompt and then evaluating the results. It may be welcoming to as an alternative to common seeking behavior of jumping from one search to another and helping where they lose track of the process. So it might be a good alternative to that particular behavior. Another one we want to look at is Elicit. Again, this one's been around for a while, but it is has a lot of AI, generative AI functionality, and it is mostly or originally designed specifically to be an AI-enabled systematic review tool. It was being for systematic reviews, it's built on the structure of clinical trials and other empirical research. Newer features are designed to provide user flexibility in what data is needed to be extracted. So they're trying to go beyond just that clinical medical application. The company also boasts about the time saved for researchers, but we noted that 5 hours per week is figure is coming from a survey where they had 10% of the respondents implying that time savings. So in terms of the benefits for the graduate students in their literature review process, it does connect with Zotero. It has the ability to, I'm sorry, my notes got mixed up on here. We would say that with working with students who are doing more of a systematic review, the narrative reviews and beyond, it's going to have some potential for the students, but we would have to design and adapt this process for those doing more narrative reviews. To consider this tool more broadly, we'd have to do a lot of training, create more stuff, and really work on anytime there's a tool like this that produces a report, we'd have to make sure we're working with students to do their own paraphrasing, to get everything into their own words and avoid plagiarism.
So the next tool we want to look at is called Kenius. It's a very unique one that we stumbled across. It's sort of a search engine as well as a document analysis tool that analyzes your own writing, and then it recommends or tries to identify potential holes when you're in your writing or your lit review. So it claims that it can help students and researchers as well as librarians identify related research when writing an article or conducting some sort of interview. It also claims to promote clarity, thoroughness, and efficiency in the writing and research process by quote unquote helping to uncover information that one would struggle to find. So in that sense, it sort of acts as a second pair of eyes. And then finally, it claims to help researchers better understand new papers, especially when working in fields with which they are maybe unfamiliar or, kind of just entering into. In terms of the graduate literature review process, this is a clear example of a searching as well as an analyzing tool. It streamlines research and writing with a unique Word Google Docs integration, which to me seems unique and interesting because it allows you basically to leverage the generative AI technology to kind of focus on your own writing and improve your own writing, because it's not necessarily just dumping in content and you can just hit a button and then you're done, but you have to put some time and energy into writing, and then you can have it tell you, oh, hey, maybe you're missing this and this feature or this article. It says it's pulling information from 100 million research articles cataloged at OpenAlex, which OpenAlex itself says it has is a fairly robust catalog of 243 million. So I'm not sure if that's an older number or if there is maybe like a discrepancy in terms of maybe it's a paywall access issue sort of thing. But anyway, I think the important thing to emphasize here is that the service explicitly says that it does not want to quote unquote automate the entire research process. It just wants to help make the writing process and research process easier by making sure that you are covering all your bases, or at least are aware of literature that might exist. I think this is an intriguing option, and it's one that we collectively are intrigued to kind of look into and see similar programs.
We will be paying to look at this one more carefully because it's pretty limited on what you can do just free. So, but yeah, we're all, as Paul said, we're all interested in this one. So we wanted to sort of wrap up a little bit about our implications for the graduate literature support. As noted in the sample of the tools, many claim to save research time, but should that be our primary goal when considering the needs of emerging independent researchers? We think there's a need for training and facilitated use of these tools. Confidence is being built into these programs where basically they're making things up and they fake it until they make it kind of philosophy with a lot of confidence. So these generative AI programs have a tendency, as we all know, to hallucinate citations and facts. So there needs to be some guidance, especially not just interpreting, but also in how we're prompting these, because we know that junk in is also junk out. There may be some other there are many other challenges that we're also facing. We have to not only understand how different disciplines perceive the process of doing a thesis or dissertation, but also how each of these disciplines are handling generative AI. In our case, we lack a standard university policy in terms of using AI. We have a Kansas Board of Regents who has a statement that we're not supposed to upload copyrighted materials into AI programs. We have publishers that we have to be concerned about if the graduate student is going to move on to publishing as well. We're also worried about other issues such as whether or not we can even use the tools with our KU logons because of licensing and procurement issues. So even if we decide that we really like a tool, we may not be able to move forward on it. We also have training challenges because these programs are changing rapidly and constantly changing. So we could start our programming, our training materials, and then realize we have to go back and change things. We also know that some things that are paywall don't have paywalls today, might have paywalls tomorrow. As Paul noted, we have concerns about tools being bought up or simply just going away. So we're kind of concerned, but as I think you've probably already gathered from us, our audience is not trying to look for innovation as much as they are just trying to look for good, stable ways to improve their processes. They have so many other things that they're trying to juggle. So we intentionally are trying not to bombard them with too many options or tools that might have too much of a learning curve or other issues associated with them. So we're being very cautious about what we advocate for and not just worried about what's new. We wanted to share that we have been reading a lot, and currently on our reading list are some of these articles listed here. We're looking at articles that help us understand philosophically the ethics of all this, especially from that graduate student perspective. We're looking for examples of other people assessing generative AI and other AI use in the literature review process, especially for graduate students. So we're really happy to see that there's some current literature out there. And we're also just sort of paying attention to whatever we can find about how generative AI use is affecting critical thinking and learning. So with that, thank you. We appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them. Selwyn, should I stop my slides now?
Sure, feel free to.
Okay.
Unless someone would like you to go back to a particular slide. So thank you, Carmen and Paul, and your third person, Samantha, in her absence for this presentation. So we open to questions. Someone asked, can you put up the reading list again?
Yeah, I saw that in the chat. I'm
Right.
kind of glancing through the chat and I see that, so.
A link to the slides. Do we have a link, or were the slides placed, are the slides made available at all?
We would like to make them available. We were fine tuning up to the last moment, so I apologize for that. But Selwyn, is there a place for us to put them after the session's over?
Where in the lobby?
Okay.
Right, where there was a summary of your presentation there
And you're also welcome
towards the
to
end there.
email us as well.
Right, great. Okay, I had offered persons to use, okay, I'm seeing the Q&A. Somehow it's hidden. Right, so I have a question there. For Undermined, do you happen to know if they are solely using semantic scholar or using any other sources as well?
They appear to be using some other sources. It's possible to get into their FAQs, and they are fairly transparent about who they're partnering with. So SRRN is one of them off the top of my head. They're trying to expand beyond the semantic scholar.
Great, thank you. So if there are any other questions or comments, feel free.
Since there's interest in the reading list, I'm going to add that I have been kind of playing around with some of these tools, trying to find if there's articles that are relevant to us, and I'm not finding them to be very helpful yet. Maybe my prompting isn't good, or maybe it's just the corpus is not very useful for this topic.
Okay. In the chat, someone had included a link. Elizabeth Young had included a link to Lehigh's Kineos LibGuide.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that. And I see that Elizabeth noted that that tool does not save the content. I apologize, we forgot to note that is one of our top level concerns, is whether or not the tools are protecting privacy, protecting the content that is put in there. And yes, Kineos, if that's how it's said, is one of those tools that is being respectful of not automatically inputting content into a large language model or saving the content that you're putting in. As I said, though, that we have concerns at our university about anything going up into a cloud tool. So we have to be cautious of that.
Right. I have another question or query. I'll read it for you. It's in the Q&A. It's from John Glover. It says, thank you. I really appreciate the way you expressed care not to overload your patrons with new tools. Have they, that is your patrons, expressed any favorite among tools, either presented here or others you didn't touch on?
I'll try to answer that question, and Paul, maybe you can jump in too. I'm cautious to only talk to students that sort of, at this point, initiate the conversation and start telling me what they've been exploring. I know some students have been very happy with using Research Rabbit and LitMap for the visualizations and for understanding how authors are connected and how papers are connected. But those aren't necessarily generative AI tools parts that they are really looking at.
This might be looking into the future a little bit, but I work with EndNote, students working with EndNote and Zotero. And I know EndNote, the newest version, which I don't believe we have access to just yet at KU, but I'm assuming we will, is integrating generative AI technology into its internal workings. EndNote itself is fairly popular with students, so I have a feeling that that will be a topic of discussion that's going to come up with as the intersection of Gen AI and EndNote. It's going to be a point of discussion, and I don't know if people will like it or hate it, but I definitely think it will be one that people will be talking about.
And also, I think I may have forgot to say this on our closing slides, but our university library has licensed site. So we already have that sort of commitment to that particular tool. So some of these other tools that we were talking about would be just supplemental for that. So we are definitely going to be involved as we train. That license came through and our access to it just in the last month. So we're planning on training sessions, workshops in the fall. We have already started talking to graduate students about this tool, and we'll be doing a lot of thinking about how this really helps or hinders what they're doing so we can provide some guidance for them.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. We still have a few minutes, so feel free. Good, someone shared something in the chat, Lorraine, saying, just curious, is your research funded?
So the funding that we do have is from an internal university grant system that we have for faculty. And so far, we haven't used any of those funds because we're going to be using it when we start having some graduate writing groups. to actually test and see how they're really using AI in their workflows. But so far, it's funded in the sense that we have support for doing this, but we just haven't paid for any licensing of any of these tools yet. Is anybody else doing something similar to this? We'd love to learn from other people as well.
We have a comment here from Amy. Casually, yes, in an Excel file. I am also tracking languages. Most of my users are Francophone.
We did not talk about that, but we are noticing that some of these tools have more than one language capability, which is very useful and intriguing for a lot of our users. I see somebody else also looked at undermined and illicit before recommending site for a subscription. I'm not sure how our colleagues that are our content development team picked site over other things, except that a lot of that was based on the fact that the corpus works really well with other tools that we had already licensed from the company that owned site. And site was one of those tools that was developed independently first and then bought up by another company that was already playing well with libraries. And Lorraine, you said you saw a session at SUNY. What conference was that? Oh, it was one. Oh, I'll look for that session. Thank you. So here at the Gale conference is one of the sessions she saw. So I'm going to look for that one. And she's pulled it up. At dawn, we ride blazing trails through the AI wilderness. Thank you for
Yes, I
sharing
remember
that.
that from yesterday. I also attended that one, yes.
And Steve Kramer is noting that the ASRL libraries have a license for site as a consortial license. Yeah, early on when I discovered site was happening, I went, oh my gosh, they play well with libraries. They're going to be ahead of everybody else, no matter what the tool is, just because of how well they're playing with libraries.
And we are being reminded that we can use the Discord link to continue this conversation and to keep chatting over at least the period of the conference and maybe even beyond.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the slide back up that has our contact information. You're welcome to contact Paul and I with any questions, comments, discussion. We feel like there's a small group of people out there that really care about graduate students, and we'd love to hear from you. And thank you for the applause and fireworks and stuff. We appreciate it. I have to admit, I was a little nervous discussing this today because I wish we were a little further along in our research, but.
Great. So thank you so much, Carmen, Paul, and Samantha in her absence. Go right ahead, Carmen.
I was going to say thank you, Selwyn, for being our moderator and watching out for questions and helping to keep me calm before we opened up the door.
It was a pleasure. I enjoyed the presentation also. Okay, as I know all the participants did, and people are happy to hear from you of your work in progress. It would give us also confidence as we too participate in this journey. So thank you so much and all the best in your continuing research. If there are no further questions, we still have 1 minute. Any last minute questions? We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, the last day of our conference. And we do have a closing keynote address at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, otherwise we begin from 1 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, remember our I forget what we call that. Posters, sorry. The poster session, remember they are there and you can continue viewing them even after the end of the conference. So pleasant evening to all. Thank you again, Carmen and Paul and Samantha. God
Thank you,
bless you.
everyone, for attending.